Hello YouTube, Brin here from bygender.net. So it's the first week of December, and after 30 days of making a video for every day, it feels like it's been forever instead of just a week. Speaking of my last video, so my last video was the very first in what I hope is a series of Brin Live shows or events. I don't know. I used Google Plus Hangout with Paige and Erica from the bygender.net forums, who were fantastic. And we had a whole lot of fun. Granted, it was 2 hours, so if you had if you don't have that kind of chunk of time, I totally understand that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and I think you should check it out. But I would like some feedback on whether or not you think that there's value in me doing more Brin Live events. Whether it's just me or if I reassemble the Transvestism trio, let me know. Let me know those things, because I really did enjoy doing it. So I thought that after having 30 days or 30 different videos that I'd run out of things to say, but I really wanted to get back into the swing of making videos. And then, conveniently, the American Psychiatric Association and the committee that was in charge of putting together the DSM made their final changes to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness and Mental Disorders. I'm sorry. So, among many changes, especially in the area of personality disorders, they changed the name of the diagnosis for from gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria, and it's having some interesting effects. So it's not truly final until it's published in May, and kind of goes through some testing, and there might be some revisions afterward. But the DSM really is only truly revised once every decade or two. So, getting a change in now is probably better than having to wait for the next one to have it removed, because there's a lot of talk in the media about it being this really great, step, because it's supposed to make it it's supposed to encourage psychiatrists and psychologists not to pathologize gender identity, and really focus on bringing the comfort about the body back in line with the gender identity, rather than the way it's originally written today in the DSM-4, which I guess it focuses more on there being a disorder with the person, and can be extrapolated into trying to fix the gender identity rather than trying to fix the body that the gender identity is stuck in. So it's being lauded as this big, huge, whoopee, good job. And I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm a telecom engineer, and I would not necessarily know anything about transgender issues, queer issues. Well, queer issues I would know, but privilege and all of that other stuff if I weren't trans myself. But I am. And it was pointed out to me by Claire Louise Swinford, who is an activist in St. Louis, just how little it actually accomplishes. It's a lot of word games, but the actual goal should not be to change the definition in the DSM. It should be to remove gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria from the DSM. So, remove it as a mental disorder and move it into the medical books, the medical diagnostic manuals, because the treatment for gender identity disorder aside from the comorbid depression and anxiety that can come with being trans, it's not itself a mental disorder, at least certainly not something you can treat with therapy. The only real treatment for it is treating your body, modifying your body, which is a medical thing. And keeping it in the DSM, and this is a conversation I've heard afterward, you know, all of this stuff, in a conversation with Claire and some other people and some other research I've done. The fact that it's in the DSM at all means it is a disorder. It's by virtue of being classed in the DSM a psychiatric disorder or you know, a mental disorder, and there's a lot of insurance that won't cover mental and behavioral health, or cover it at much smaller, you know, levels. So if it becomes a medical diagnosis, then, you know, then it's something that falls under insurance by nature of being medical rather than being mental, you know. Which I guess I had never really thought about it. It's one of those things where you just accept the status quo as the norm because that's what it's always been, not because it makes sense for it to be the norm. So, you know, I really thank Claire for opening my eyes to that and, you know, giving me that different, I think, better perspective. So, you know, I think there's a lot that remains to be seen, and there's problems too with the people that were involved in making these changes. Ray Blanchard is one of these people who believes in autogynephilia, which is the idea that there's a class of true transsexuals, and then there's a class of very gay men who get off on the idea of their bodies looking like a woman's or being a woman's body, or you know, it becomes a fetish. It's not about your gender identity not matching your, you know, forced gender roles, or the body that you're living in. And so the true transsexual lines all up with the Harry Benjamin standards. And everybody else is, oh God, I can't remember the name of it, homosexual, transsexual, or fetishistic, or something else. But the word is autogynephilia, which is, you know, love of self with a vagina, basically. And, you know, he was involved on the committee that determined the gender identity standards in this book, and his theories are so punitive and so abusive. And he was the one who gets to lead the charge on telling me that, you know, that my gender dysphoria isn't enough, it's not good enough, or that, you know, there's no such thing as a non-binary identity, or something else. You know, it's the last guy that I want, you know, involved in trying to determine my mental health or my treatment plan, you know, because he believes in more reparative therapy, which means, you know, trying to get me to be happy being a guy rather than, you know, living the gender that I am, that I identify with. And, you know, I'm not going to go through all kinds of self-flagellation and abuse to try and be a man. I did that for 30 years, you know. So, you know what? Way off topic. Anyway, so yeah, this asshole was involved in making these diagnostic criteria. So I'm really worried about, you know, what the actual results of this might be, because they also changed transvestism from a paraphilia to a full-on disorder, which is, you know, again, something that's punitive and requires a different protocol of treatment than, you know, learning to accept yourself for who you are, or just living outside the binary. You know, it's not a disorder if you're functional and you identify with a different gender than is in the binary. Because for the fact of the matter is, even within the binary, there's a huge spectrum of gender presentation and gender performance. So, to say that there's a limit at this point, you are just a feminine man. And then if you go just this much over, now you're disordered because, your gender doesn't line up with what Ray Blanchard thinks men are supposed to do or women are supposed to do. So, and he had partners in crime on this, and I can't remember the woman's name that was participating in this. So that's kind of what's going on right now. That news broke, I think, just a couple of days ago. It's been rumored and like we knew it was coming, but the confirmation just came the last couple of days. So, it's interesting because the WPATH standards of care were completely revised last September and moved completely away from the Harry Benjamin model of gatekeeping and gender policing into an informed consent model, similar to what they've been doing at Howard Brown with the Think program for 3 years, at least, since I started anyway. And then here comes this DSM revision that sounds like it's more in line with that and sounds like it recognizes non-binary identities. But, like, what if my gender dysphoria isn't good enough for the psychiatrist that I'm talking to, and they decide that I'm a transvestite instead, or that I'm autogynephilic, and that, I'm not qualified to be the gender I am, or that I'm insane for being bigender, It worries me, and it's a weird dichotomy, Actually, something else. So I went to see this panel at University of Illinois at Chicago on transgender activism, and there was a lawyer there named Owen Daniel McCarter, and he works with the Transformative Justice Law Project of Illinois. And one of the things that they do is Gender Name Change Project. So once a month down at the Daily Center, they work with people to get their name changed, and they help walk through the paperwork, and then they have volunteers that help you in the courtroom, But he was talking on this panel about activism in the trans community and intersex community, and how this change to DSM actually puts a lot of case law and legislation at risk. Like, we've had all of these fights over the years to open up protection based on gender identity. And in the Seventh Circuit here in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, if you're imprisoned and you have a gender identity disorder diagnosis, then the prison has to provide treatment for you. And you have to be placed in gender-affirming prisons or jails. Like, if you're a trans woman, you have to be put with the women. That's what the case requires, or the ruling. That's the result of the ruling anyway. So now that the diagnosis is gender dysphoria, there might be a loophole where if you don't have a gender dysphoria diagnosis, or if you have a gender dysphoria diagnosis but you don't have a gender identity disorder diagnosis, then you don't qualify for the protections that have already been fought for. And so we have to have all of these fights all over again. A lot of the result of that remains to be seen. So, pardon the pun, but the jury's still out on that. And the other thing that I learned from him is that the Think program doesn't provide a gender identity disorder diagnosis. So while it can be assumed that I have gender identity disorder, and actually I think maybe I have the diagnosis from the therapist that I was seeing, because she wasn't a Hobro therapist. If I don't have that physical diagnosis, then if I'm imprisoned, I have to be put in a men's prison, and I don't get any gender health treatments, you know, like I would get no hormones, and they would shave off all my hair, and, you know, I couldn't have a bra, because long hair and a bra in prison apparently is contraband in a men's prison, but it's seen as a necessity in a women's prison. So, you know, because I'm going through the Think program at Howard Brown, if something happened to me and I was suddenly in the criminal justice system, you know, they'd have to go with my legally defined gender marker, which is male. So, I mean, that's kind of a frightening concept, you know? Like, what happens if I'm driving while trans, you know? Because it's not unheard of for police to harass trans women. Granted, I'm at less risk, just because of my class and race. It doesn't make it okay, and it's still frightening. So I'm just, you know, checking my privilege on that one. And the last thing, actually, I just saw this today. This friend I met at the comic shop posted a link today on, and I'll link it here. How about over here? Right here. To a video about making your own lipstick. And I bring that up because somebody did talk about me wearing lipstick, but making your own lipstick out of Crayola crayons. Totally, well, I mean, I suppose any crayon, but any non-toxic crayon. But apparently there's been, the FDA has found a bunch of lead in lipsticks, like name brand lipsticks, and she was looking for a non-toxic alternative, and she shows you how, with 2 basic ingredients and a crayon, half a crayon even, you can make your own lipstick. And if it's, you know, since you have access to Crayola's entire palette, now the possibilities are basically endless for affordable and beautiful lipstick. And she demonstrates it, and it looks great. I'm curious about how long, you know, the wear is, if I have to reapply it all day long. But I think it's really cool. I may have to try it out. So I'll put that link up here again, and down in the show notes as well. So that's all I have today. And that's a lot. Let me know about Brin Live as a feature, if that's something you enjoyed. Check out the lipstick thing, and keep your eye on this DSM-5 stuff. I don't know what the likelihood of any changes happening between now and May is. May is when it's released and published, so kind of curious to see. I think there's some activism still going on, you know, petitioning the APA to, at the very least, modify what they're going to publish and make it more human affirming and less pathologizing of something that isn't necessarily a pathology. So, yeah, I have to go take the dog out because that's why she was barking, and I'm going to post this, and I am so glad to be back making videos. I don't know that I'm going to do a 30 and 30 again anytime real soon, because that was kind of exhausting, but it was a lot of fun anyway. So, goodbye, my loves.